Knox Williams. He is the head of the American Suppressor Association. Knox, welcome back. It's been way too long since you were here.
Yes, sir. It's been a few years, but thank you for having me back. It's truly a pleasure.
Well, I mean, it's a momentous week with some great news going on. We ought to back up and tell people, though, about American Suppressor Association. You guys are, what, 24 years in existence now? Is that 14 years?
14.
14.
Yes,
I got the math wrong. Yeah. 14 years. And I guess, when you started out, there weren't that many people who had suppressors.
There really weren't. So when we started in 2011, there were about 285,000 suppressors in the registry. That means that from 1934 until 2011, that's how many suppressors were made and legally obtained. Since then, fast forward to today, there's over 4.5 million. So the market has truly taken off.
Well, obviously, I mean, you have done an amazing job at promoting the idea of suppressors and silencers used to make shooting safer. And people go, what do you mean safer? I'm talking about safer for the shooter and for people around them, safer to protect their hearing, to make it a more pleasurable experience, and actually better for shooting ranges when you're not making so darn much noise. But, something you have done that you might want to talk about for just a second before we get to the news is being able to get a number of states to remove their prohibitions on using suppressors for hunting.
Yes, sir, that's correct. That's been, organizationally, we've got two top-line goals. One, we want to get suppressors out of the NFA. The NFA shouldn't exist, and we believe that getting them out is our top priority. The other top priority is making them legal in all 50 states, and that's for both ownership and for use in the field while hunting. In the past 14 years I've personally worked in dozens of states across the country. We helped legalize suppressor ownership and hunting in Iowa, Minnesota, and Vermont. And we've helped legalize suppressor hunting, broadly speaking, across the country in 19 states, bringing the total number of states where you can own a suppressor up to 42, and the total number of states where you can hunt with a suppressor all the way up to 41.
Amazing. I want to tell a quick little story, and you'll appreciate this one because it won't be news to you, but to a lot of people they know about suppressors, they own suppressors, they may not understand how some people, some parts of the public react to the idea of silencers and suppressors. And we were doing a video shoot, 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And somebody from NASA was coming out to our video shoot. They were bringing some suppressors with them and checking them on the airplane and had to declare them like you do a firearm. And the lady at the ticket counter says, "What is that?" He said, "Well, it's a suppressor." He said, "What do you mean?" "It's a silencer." He said, she stopped and looked at him and she said, "Are you an assassin?" It's like you want to say, "Well, yeah, here's my card, right?" "Yes, of course I'm an assassin." Yep. Yes. But it is an example, isn't it? It's what you run into all the time.
It is, yeah. We hear that sort of stuff all the time. You're absolutely right. And funny story on TSA and checking these sorts of things. I can't tell you how many times I've checked guns with suppressors at the airport, and the people that I'm checking them with will ask me, "Are you sure that suppressor is unloaded?" It's like, Lord have mercy. Like, the misunderstanding is just, it's pretty far out there.
You can look through it. You can see daylight on the other end of it. It's okay.
Yeah. And that's the thing. These things are treated as firearms under federal law. But at the end of the day, you can't put a bullet in a suppressor and shoot it. It's completely dependent upon a host firearm. So, from our perspective, the regulations on these things are archaic, they're ridiculous, and it really just, it's overcoming all those misconceptions and the myths that you talked about. People thinking, oh, these are assassin's tools. Oh, these things actually silence the noise of a gunshot. Absolutely not. They're still very loud even with a suppressor. It's just a lot less loud, a lot safer, a lot more enjoyable to shoot with them.
Okay, so for years we've been trying to get the Hearing Protection Act passed, which would basically take suppressors and silencers, whatever you want to call them, out of the National Firearms Act. No $200 tax, no registration, no fingerprinting, no mother may I, just go out and buy the darn thing. And as much as we worked on it, and you know the drill, Knox, we worked, it's like, I don't know if we're ever going to get this done. And then we had this amazing thing happen. Donald Trump gets elected. We got a new Department of Justice, and we got a new, basically, awareness, if you will, in the Congress. First, let's start with what is happening right now with the reconciliation bill. I'll give you the floor.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So the reconciliation bill is basically trying to get the budgets aligned between the two chambers and to the president's desk. President Trump has asked Congress to deliver him what he's calling the one big, beautiful bill so that he can sign it, hopefully prior to July 4th. That's their target date. So this bill has a ton of different stuff, a ton of components, most of which have nothing to do with firearms. The rule with reconciliation is that it has to have a nexus with the budget. So it has to be fiscal in nature and has to do with revenue. And luckily for us, suppressors are part of the National Firearms Act, and the National Firearms Act is part of the Internal Revenue Code. So it makes our issue germane.
Okay, and there's a tax involved here.
Yes, sir. The entirety of the National Firearms Act exists and is justified as a tax. So in 1934, kind of rewind the clocks. Homer Cummings, who was the Attorney General at the time, FDR, and Congress, they all wanted to ban guns. They knew that they couldn't actually ban guns because, guess what? We have the Second Amendment, thank goodness. But they realized that they had the authority to tax. So that is what they did with the National Firearms Act. They threw as much stuff in as they possibly could. The original draft actually had handguns in it, which is why you see, short barrel shotguns and short barrel rifles now. In a world in which you can have a handgun and you can have a rifle, it makes no sense that you can't have a medium-sized gun. But if you think about them trying to pull handguns or restrict handguns, they didn't want people to take a rifle and literally saw the barrel off and saw the stock off and create a pistol. So it sort of makes sense in that context, but without the inclusion of handguns, it really doesn't make any sense. But I digress on that. So the National Firearms Act was justified by Congress when they passed it as a tax. In 1937, there was a Supreme Court case, Sinzinski v. U.S., where the Supreme Court asserted that it was constitutional because it is a tax. So, if you're hearing a theme, that's intentional. That's because suppressors are included in the National Firearms Act as a tax, and as a tax, it is germane to reconciliation. And that's really the fight that we're currently fighting to try and make sure that it remains in the reconciliation package.
And the big news of the week is that we thought at one point there was going to be some weird compromise of it would still be registered, you still be on the rolls, have to go through all of the NFA stuff, but they would reduce the tax to zero. And then that went away. And now, if I'm right, now bring me up to speed here, it looks like at least in the House, in the version passed in the House, the Hearing Protection Act passes and silencers are taken out of NFA. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And this is one of the most exciting moments of my professional career and for all of us, right? Getting Section 2 of the Hearing Protection Act, which is the provision that removes suppressors from the National Firearms Act, included in reconciliation and passed by the House. I think we all need to take a step back and understand the gravity of that. The House just voted to take suppressors out of the NFA. One half of Congress just took that vote, and it is incredibly exciting for us political geeks.
It is an amazing thing. Would never have happened without Donald Trump being elected. Now it goes to the Senate, and if it makes it through the Senate, the president has said he will sign this. He's going to sign the reconciliation bill, and then suppressors simply get taken out of NFA altogether.
Military families are stronger together. That's why American Public University offers special rates and grants the whole family can take advantage of. Whether it's our preferred military rate or veteran grant, we make education accessible for active duty service members, veterans, and their families. No current enrollment needed. If you have a family member in the military, you're eligible. American Public University. Education for every military family. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.
Online education is convenient, but sometimes it can be lonely. Sometimes the extra help you need can only come from someone else. At American Public University, we make online education personalized, affordable, and memorable. With 24/7 mental health support available in multiple languages, access to career coaches, and lifelong career services, you'll never feel alone on your path to success. American Public University. Digital by nature, human by design.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Taken out, they would still fall under the Gun Control Act, so they'd be treated like regular firearms. And I say regular with air quotes, right? Like rifles and pistols and shotguns. So you would still have to go fill out a 4473 if you're buying them at a dealer. You would still have to pass a NICS check, which, by the way, is the exact same NICS check that they run currently when you go through the NFA process. You just don't have the taxes. You don't have to submit fingerprints and photos, and you're not part of the registry, the NFRTR, which at the end of the day, is just a registry of those taxes paid. Consider it their way of keeping the receipts on who has paid those taxes. It's used for other purposes, but that is why it exists, and it would be so exciting to be able to get suppressors out of that.
Okay, we got another thing to talk about after the break. But before I hit the break, what do you see as the likelihood of this going through and making it through the Senate?
We've got a great likelihood, but we've got to keep up the pressure.
So everybody's got to be calling their senators now and saying, I want the Hearing Protection Act passed. We got to free the suppressors, right?
Yes, sir. And we make it real easy. If you visit hearingprotectionact.com, it's hearingprotectionact.com. You put in your name, you put in your address. It'll automatically email your members of Congress because this thing's going to ping-pong back and forth between both chambers. So also reach out to the House, and we make it very simple. It takes about 20 seconds.
Okay, very good. All right, Knox, hold on a second here because we have even newer breaking news, something that just happened as we started into this weekend, and we're going to be breaking that news for you right here when we come back on Gun Talk.
EOTech is the leader in electro-optics technology. Check out their new holographic weapon sight with the Danger Close reticle for fast acquisition in close-quarter situations. If magnification is what you need, the new Voodoo 3-9x32 super short scope is your ticket. Coming in at a mere 6.8 inches, this scope checks the boxes for almost any shooting scenario. To see these products and learn about others, be sure to check out eotechinc.com.
Put the hot new 350 Legend cartridge in a big-ass revolver, and you're ready for deer, bear, hog, antelope, and more. Built on the rugged Smith & Wesson X-frame, it's not 5 shots, not 6 shots. It's a 7-shot revolver made for hunting. The 7.5-inch ported barrel tames recoil, all stainless steel. Your Smith & Wesson 350 revolver is ready. Drool-worthy at smith-wesson.com.
What do you use your AR-15 for? Are you plinking or hunting? Perhaps it's utilized for personal defense. At Range Ready Studios, our AR-15 carbine classes train you to be ready in any situation with your rifle. You'll learn valuable drills to help you run the gun better. To learn more, go to rangereadystudios.com to learn more about our rifle classes.
The 6-ARC was developed to provide increased performance in the M4 AR-15 platform. The 6-ARC pushes a 90-grain dual performance at 2,650 feet per second with over 1,400 foot-pounds of energy. The monolithic solid copper bullet's design allows petals to separate after impact, spreading to create wound tracks and significantly adding to terminal performance. This round is an exceptional option for your modern sporting rifle. Black Hills Ammunition, the power of performance.
He's fighting for you, applying the leticillin of truth to gun rights. When you need the smackdown on guns, Tom's your guy. Now, back to Gun Talk.
Good stuff there. Hey, welcome back to Gun Talk. Our number here is Tom Talk Gun. I know that sometimes we get into the innards, if you will, of politics and Second Amendment and gun rights. It can be a little complicated. We try to break it down. We try to make it easy to understand. But understand this. Right now, we're seeing a monumental change brought about by the election of Donald Trump in the new Department of Justice, the DOJ under Pam Bondi. And I know that some of us had some concerns about Pam Bondi being the new Attorney General. I'm telling you, this is amazing stuff. We're talking right now with Knox Williams from the American Suppressor Association. And Knox, like for late Friday, we got the news of a brief file by the Department of Justice in an important case, and it just sets a brand new tone for everything going forward, doesn't it?
It really does, and I'll be honest, man, you know, it had been probably the busiest week of my career. Up until that point, I was just sitting down about ready to crack a cold beer when all of a sudden around, 5, 6 o'clock, we get notification of this, which we're about to chat about, and it was just like, okay, I guess we're back to work, right?
All right, so tell them what happened here.
So there's a case in the Fifth Circuit out of Louisiana called U.S. v. Peterson, and basically what is at question is whether or not suppressors can be regulated under the National Firearms Act. A couple months ago, an acting U.S. attorney from that district basically asserted that, yes, they can. And, it's the government's position that suppressor regulations are a good thing. Obviously, that caught a lot of flack within the administration. These acting U.S. attorneys, there's oftentimes a massive disconnect between them and, Maine DOJ, just because there's so many of these folks throughout the country dealing with so many different cases. Fast forward to Friday, and in the briefing that they put out, it was the first time that the U.S. government recognized suppressors are protected by the Second Amendment, and that any ban on the possession of suppressors or any similar accessories is unconstitutional. And that is a massive, massive shift and a massive win for us.
I mean, I want to make sure that everybody just got what you just said. The U.S. government has changed its position, and now it says that suppressors are, in fact, arms under the Second Amendment, and that means as arms, they cannot be banned, and a ban on suppressors would, in fact, be unconstitutional. Now, they had a little thing at the end of it that people are kind of getting all torn up about because they said, well, but they can still fall under NFA, they can still do that. Mark Smith, who's a really, really smart lawyer and specialist in the Second Amendment, he says, this may not be what everybody's thinking. He said they may have done that just to make sure that somebody has standing to go in and challenge this. They left the door open for somebody to come back in and maybe wipe that out completely. He said, so don't get upset about it and don't take the bait on this from all the internet trolls. So that's an interesting take also.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And look, from a pure rights perspective, this was a bit of a mixed signal, right? On the one hand, the best thing that we've ever heard the government take on any NFA item. On the other hand, saying, hey, the NFA is constitutional. I agree, right? That's not great. And, we're going to work with the administration to try and fix that. And to Mark's point as well, if we can sort this out through the courts, that's great as well. But I think that it's very important for us to really recognize how big of a paradigm shift it was that they say that these are arms that are protected by the Second Amendment, especially in light of state-level litigation that we've got going on in Illinois. Anderson v. Raoul, our foundation, the ASA Foundation and Silencer Shop, are about 2.5 years into a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the state ban in Illinois based on the new Bruin standard of review. There's another case out in California, Sanchez v. Banta, arguing the same exact thing. That's already up at the appellate level. Both are being litigated by Cooper & Kirk, the firm that we brought on for Anderson v. Raoul back in 2023. So this really is a fantastic argument that we can now bring back to the courts and say, look, even the federal government recognizes that what is at question, whether or not suppressors are protected by the Second Amendment, here you go. They say they are. What say you?
This is a total sea change in the way the government approaches this. And I got to think, Knox, that this is just the start. I think Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice is going to do this on a lot of these gun cases, essentially reversing the position of the Biden administration, which favored any kind of gun restriction or gun ban or accessory ban. This could be applied not just to suppressors, but this could be applied to magazines and magazine capacity limits. It could be applied to a lot of different things. I think we're at the very beginning of seeing several years of a phenomenal time for the Second Amendment.
I agree, and I certainly hope so. And, what I think that, we need to applaud Pam Bondi and the DOJ for doing, and really this Trump administration, the radical thing of actually interpreting the Constitution as it was intended to be interpreted.
Radical.
Right?
Yeah,
let's get back to the fundamentals.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, okay, it's really fairly clear. It's really easy to understand. It's only if you twist yourself into knots can you come up with all of these other ideas that we can ban suppressors. We can ban short-barreled rifles. Like, as you say, you can have a pistol, you can have a rifle, but you can't have this medium-length thing, and owning that without saying, whether may I, and get the permission of paying the tax can put you in jail. Well, that's just crazy. And, I mean, who knows? Maybe we get rid of everything as far as NFA. I mean, is it crazy to think that we could get rid of NFA altogether?
I think ultimately, I certainly hope that we do. I don't think that that's going to happen in this Congress, but maybe through litigation, and maybe in a future Congress, right? At the end of the day, it's a ludicrous law that's unconstitutional. It shouldn't have a tax on a constitutional right. Period. End of story. And I hope that one day we can get to that point.
All right. What's the website again for the Hearing Protection Act?
It's hearingprotectionact.com.
There you go.
Best way to contact your legislators and let them know that you support removing suppressors from the NFA through the reconciliation process.
Knox Williams, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Let's get you back in here more often, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Tom.
All right. I appreciate that.